Cowboys Nation, buckle up, because what just came out of the NFL Combine might quietly shape the entire future of this franchise. We just heard from Brian Schottenheimer in a press conference that was way more revealing than people realize, and if you read between the lines, there are some massive clues about where the Dallas Cowboys are headed next season. This wasn't just coach speak. This wasn't generic off-season filler. There were real hints about scheme changes, locker room dynamics, draft philosophy, and even which players might be on the move. So, let's break this down the right way. First of all, the big headline. The Cowboys are fully committing to a 3-4 defensive system. That's not a minor tweak. That's not just a formation adjustment. That's an identity shift. When you move from a traditional 4-3 base to a 3-4 structure, you are changing how you attack offenses, how you draft, how you develop linebackers, and how you pressure quarterbacks. And Schottenheimer made it very clear. This is about forcing offenses into uncomfortable protection schemes. In a 3-4, you're creating more one-on-one situations. You're forcing offensive lines to declare protections. You're making them block 5-on-5 and dare them to win. That tells you the Cowboys believe they have the personnel to dominate those matchups. Now let's talk about one of the most interesting nuggets, the hiring of Brandon Tucker, the pass rush consultant who helped the Denver Broncos lead the league in sacks over the last 2 seasons. And here's the wild part. This wasn't just a front office decision. Players were pushing for it. Names like Osa Odigizua and even veterans around the league were reaching out saying, "We need this guy." When players advocate for a coach, that matters. That means buy-in. That means respect. And when you're installing a new defensive system, having players already excited about a coach's track record can accelerate development. Schottenheimer also emphasized energy, connection, and youth on the coaching staff. He's building something that isn't just X's and O's. It's about culture. He talked about communication, alignment with scouts, and having a shared vision of what traits they want in players. That's huge, because too often teams draft talent without a unified plan. The Cowboys are clearly trying to avoid that. They want specific height, weight, speed profiles. They want toughness. They want ball tracking ability. They want explosive lower body movement in corners. That's not random scouting talk. That's blueprint building. The shift to the Fangio-style shell concepts is another massive development. When Schottenheimer referenced the modern shell system, popularized in different forms by coaches across the league, he was talking about 2 high safety looks, disguise, late rotation, and forcing quarterbacks to be patient. That requires intelligence. That requires communication. That requires versatile defenders. And he said it plainly. You need guys who can run, tackle, and adjust on the fly. Multiplicity is the word. If you're going to show one thing pre-snap and rotate post-snap, your players better understand the rules. Then we get to one of the most exciting position changes, moving Maris Lufau to outside linebacker. That's a fascinating move. In a 3-4, your outside linebackers are edge setters first and pass rushers second. They occasionally drop into coverage, but their primary job is violence at the point of attack. Schottenheimer basically described Lufau as a downhill, length-based disruptor who thrives when attacking rather than backpedaling. That's maximizing a player's strengths instead of forcing him into space responsibilities that neutralize his aggression. If he adds weight like they suggested, that could be a breakout adjustment. The defensive tackle rotation also becomes more flexible in this scheme. Kenny Clark has experience at nose tackle. Osa can play the 3, 4-eye, or 5. And Schottenheimer made it crystal clear. This is not the old-school 2-gap 3-4 where linemen just read and react. They're getting vertical. They're attacking. That means penetration. That means chaos. That means forcing quick decisions from quarterbacks. Now let's talk draft philosophy, because this is where it gets real. Schottenheimer doubled down on best player available. He even referenced CeeDee Lamb as the example. If a blue-chip player falls, you don't pass on him just because you think you're set at a position. That tells you something important. The Cowboys are not drafting strictly for need. If an elite tight end, corner, or receiver is sitting there, they'll pull the trigger. And speaking of tight ends, his comments about that position were revealing. He talked about how tight ends are weapons, especially in today's nickel-heavy league where defenses play bigger safeties like Derwin James near the box. Tight ends with size can block those hybrid defenders or body them up in coverage. He even referenced watching Antonio Gates develop from raw athlete to Hall of Famer. That tells you he values development at that position. Don't be shocked if tight end is firmly in play early in the draft. The nickel corner position might be even more urgent. He described the nickel role as having to cover like a corner, tackle like a linebacker, and blitz like a safety. That's premium value. When a coach spends that much time explaining how difficult and important a position is, that's not accidental. That's scouting code. Expect the Cowboys to either invest money in free agency or use serious draft capital there. Linebacker depth is also clearly a priority. DeMarvion Overshown was mentioned with excitement. They see him as a key developmental piece. Young players like Shamar James and Justin Barron were referenced as raw but instinctive. That means coaching and scheme fit will determine whether they make a leap. Offensively, the emphasis on evolving is critical. Schottenheimer admitted defenses are attacking second and long like third down now. That means winning first down is everything. You can't be behind the sticks. You can't be predictable. Turnovers must decrease. He flat out said ball security is step one. The George Pickens comments were extremely telling too. Moving him around, keeping him engaged, building around his versatility. When coaches talk about a player as part of future plans with that kind of tone, that's not temporary language. That's investment language. The running back room also got attention. Javonte Williams returning was described as ascending, still young, and capable of pushing the offense to another level. They learned how to manage his workload late in the season. That signals smarter usage ahead. And younger backs like Jaden Blue and Hunter Lupke were mentioned as players who want bigger roles. That's internal competition. The offensive line remains fluid. Tyler Smith ideally stays inside, but they'll play the best five. When a coach says, "We're not opposed to doing what's best for the football team," that's subtle code for potential position shifts or even roster moves. One of the most underrated parts of the press conference was how they interview draft prospects. They teach them concepts, then they quiz them. They test retention. That mirrors installation in the offseason. That's forward-thinking evaluation. They're not just asking about adversity, they're simulating the learning curve. And culturally, Schottenheimer kept returning to connection. Energy, faith, family, love for players. That might sound soft, but in today's NFL, player-coach relationships matter more than ever. When you're asking young defenders to learn a complex hybrid 3-4 shell system, trust becomes currency. So what does all this mean? It means the Dallas Cowboys are not tinkering. They are restructuring. Defensively, they're building around pressure flexibility and shell disguise. Offensively, they're prioritizing evolution and first down efficiency. In the draft, they're going best player available while quietly targeting premium positions like nickel and tight end. And internally, they're betting on young players developing under a more aligned coaching staff. This wasn't just another combine media session. This was a roadmap disguised as casual answers. If you pay attention, you can see the vision forming. The Cowboys believe they have the core talent. Now they're trying to sharpen it with smarter scheme, better communication, and targeted roster moves. And here's the bottom line. When a franchise makes this many coordinated shifts at once, new defensive identity, coaching adjustments, philosophical clarity, that usually signals urgency. They don't believe they're rebuilding. They believe they're reloading. Cowboys fans, this offseason is going to move fast. Free agency will reveal the first layer of this plan. The draft will reveal the second. And training camp will show us whether this 3-4 experiment unlocks the pass rush the way they believe it will. If you're still riding with this team, if you're still believing that this version of the Cowboys can take the next step, then stay locked in. because the clues are there, the vision is forming, and the next few months will determine whether this blueprint turns into something special. Make sure you're subscribed, make sure you're tapped in, and drop your thoughts below, because this off-season just got a whole lot more interesting.